Welcome to today's Explainer Masterclass. We've got an epic journey ahead of us today. We're going to be unpacking Japan's post-World War II reconstruction. But listen, we aren't just looking at this as a standard history lesson. We're framing this whole thing as the ultimate challenge in global construction management. I want you to just imagine standing in the center of a city that has been completely leveled to ash. Where do you even begin? How do you design, negotiate, and physically rebuild an entire society from the ground up, and then continue to adapt it over 80 years of massive economic and demographic shifts? If you're going into construction management, this is absolutely the ultimate case study. So let's dive right in. Here is our roadmap for today's session. 1. From ashes to rebirth. 2. Rebuilding as project management. 3. The transit-oriented growth boom. 4. The shrinking city challenge. 5. Compact cities and the skewer. And finally, 6. Sustainable master planning. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, From Ashes to Rebirth, setting the historical stage.
To really grasp the modern landscape, we've got to rewind to the devastating context of post-1945 Japan. War-damaged cities required way more than just, simple repair. They required a total reorganization of public space and civic identity. Looking at this timeline from 10,000 feet up, we start in the late 40s with emergency war-damage reconstruction, which involved basic policy and land readjustment. Moving into the 50s and 60s, the focus totally shifts to growth infrastructure. We're talking housing, rail, and massive industrial corridors. The 70s through the 90s brought suburban expansion and some new environmental controls. But then, notice the massive pivot in the 2000s, the shrinking city response, focusing heavily on compact cities and transit hubs. And finally, the 2020s demands sustainable and digital transformation planning. This timeline, it's basically the master blueprint of how Japanese urban planning has continuously evolved to meet shifting existential challenges.
Moving on to Section 2, Rebuilding as Project Management, the pivot to construction management.
I really want you to internalize this fundamental truth. Urban development is not only architecture, it is a project management system for land, utilities, access, approvals, phasing, neighborhood disruption, safety, and long-term operations. As future construction managers, the crucial takeaway here is this. Your field encompasses complex social and legal engineering, not just pouring concrete. Rebuilding a city means managing a dizzying array of competing interests and absolute logistical nightmares long before a single brick is laid.
So how did they actually pull this off? Well, here are the 6 critical phases of Japan's post-war rebuilding. Step 1. Damage scan, basically assessing the destroyed districts and infrastructure gaps. Step 2. Formulating a reconstruction plan. Step 3. Activating legal and financial tools like national subsidies. But Step 4 is where the real heavy lifting happens, negotiation and replotting. Listen, this is the hardest part of any build. Landowners, residents, and public agencies had to intensively negotiate plot boundaries. You couldn't just build. Actually, before you even thought about bulldozers, you had to convince traumatized people to give up pieces of their surviving land for the greater good. Only then could you move to Step 5, public works delivery, building roads and bridges in phases, leading finally to Step 6, long-term adaptation.
So how did these abstract steps translate into reality? Take Nagoya. The city implemented massive 100-meter-wide roads, and these weren't just for traffic, they were engineered as vital fire breaks and evacuation spaces, a very direct physical response to the devastation of firebombing. Meanwhile, Hiroshima used urban design, specifically the Peace Memorial Park, to forge an entirely new civic identity as a city of peace. This is masterful project management serving a much higher civic purpose.
Section 3. The Transit-Oriented Growth Boom, Expanding the Urban Blueprint.
As we leave that emergency reconstruction era in the rearview mirror, the timeline moves forward. The core planning problem shifted entirely from rebuilding from ashes to managing massive industrial and metropolitan expansion. Think about it. How do you accommodate explosive economic growth? In Japan, the answer was rail. Private and public railway systems became the absolute backbone of Japanese cities. We aren't just talking about trains here. We're talking about station-centered development, where an entire microeconomy lives under one roof. Everyday life, commuting, shopping, and real estate were all deeply, deeply tied to these transit hubs. It organized what could have been chaotic metropolitan sprawl into a highly efficient transit-oriented machine. If you're managing a major urban development project today, understanding how to integrate your build with existing transit infrastructure is paramount.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Shrinking City Challenge. Quantifying the modern constraints.
Okay, reality check. The era of endless growth? It's over.
We now have to address the stark realities of Japan's current demographic shifts, which are, without a doubt, the modern era's most severe project constraints. I want to hit you with this dramatic projection right here. By the year 2070, nearly 39% of the population will be aged 65 and over. I want you to really think about that from a construction and infrastructure perspective. An aging population completely changes the baseline requirements for accessibility, mobility, and healthcare infrastructure. You're no longer building for a booming youth demographic, you are building for a society of seniors.
And the sheer numbers are frankly wild. 87 million. That is the projected population for Japan by 2070, down from roughly 126 million in 2020. That is a massive loss of human capital. And it creates this immense urban-rural divide. While large cities like Tokyo and Osaka might still attract investment, regional and rural cities are facing totally vacant properties, declining tax bases, and a desperate struggle to maintain their existing infrastructure.
So as planners and builders, what's the play here? The danger is low-density sprawl, which results in a severe infrastructure burden. A shrinking city literally cannot afford the crippling cost of maintaining underused roads, utilities, and public facilities spread over a massive area. The only strategic solution to survive is guiding housing and essential services back inward, straight toward dense transit corridors and hubs. You have to condense to survive.
Section 5. Compact Cities and the Skewer. Designing for Decline. Let's look at the brilliant visual concept that guides modern Japanese urban planning, the transit skewer. It's a great analogy. Planners realize they can no longer extend services everywhere. Instead, they string together walkable neighborhood hubs, think medical centers, universities, and commercial zones along a central transit line, literally like meat and vegetables on a skewer. What should be concentrated? What should be connected? What can be reused? This is exactly how you design for a shrinking, aging population while maintaining a really high quality of life.
To see this in action, check out the city of Toyama. It's basically the poster child for this skewer strategy, practically applying a light rail system to connect specific service hubs to care for its aging population. And then you have Kashiwano Noha's Smart District, which takes it a step further. They utilize a unique public-private academic governance model to support smart energy, health innovation, and sustainability. It is an absolute masterclass in modern stakeholder management.
Finally, Section 6, Sustainable Master Planning, the Future Blueprint.
We've traveled all the way from the ashes of 1945 to the shrinking cities of today. Now let's look at how all these historical lessons culminate in the demand for total sustainability. I want every future CM professional watching this to understand sustainability is not just a single piece of technology. You don't just, slap a solar panel on a roof and call it a day. Sustainable urban development is a deeply integrated planning system. It links compact land use with low-carbon mobility, circular resources, and natural resilience. It's about connecting land use, water, energy, and community participation into one holistic, manageable project.
Because the mandates, they're already here. These targets from Japan's 2024 Basic Environment Plan include local renewable energy, circular resource use, conservation of natural capital, and regional revitalization. Listen, these aren't just nice-to-haves anymore. These are absolutely critical mandates that must be factored into every single future construction and redevelopment project you touch. If your project doesn't hit these targets, well, it doesn't get built, period.
We've seen how Japan went from negotiating land plots in the rubble to engineering smart, compact cities connected by light rail, directly addressing the incredibly tough reality of an aging, shrinking population. The history of urban development is literally the history of adapting to impossible constraints. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. How will you build the cities of tomorrow when the blueprint keeps changing? What solutions will you engineer when it's your turn to manage the project? Think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.